What is going on, guys? In today's video, I will show you the best Flay Lich build in Last Epoch Season 3. This is a Reaper style melee setup that's absolutely devastating in both farming and the endgame bossing. So, in this guide, I will first give you a quick overview of the setup, then we'll go through the skills and upgrades that you need, then we'll break down the gear that pushes this build into the top tier, and then on top of it, we will go into the passive tree, idols, blessings, and finally the gameplay, so you would be able to do the highest damage possible and much more. Also, if you're interested in buying other PC or console games with 50 or 70% discount, then check out Instant Gaming. For example, I want to buy Elden Ring, so we just click on Add to Cart, then click Pay, then input our details and pay. After payment is complete, we will receive activation key, then copy and paste the key in, and it's that simple. So, what are you waiting for? Click my link description and check out Instant Gaming for yourself. This build is all about transforming into the Reaper form and unleashing sweeping cold melee attacks with the Harvest, while using the Flay to both clear maps and empower yourself with incredible buffs. At its core, the Flay Lich is a cold damage melee monster, because every swing of your sight stacks power, AoV and sustain. The Flay ties into the army of the skin boots by generating extortion stacks that massively boost your damage and radius, while Harvest skill becomes your nuke, converting cold for the giant crits and insane leech. On top of that, the Reaper form itself will give you huge offensive and defensive bonuses. Then Aura of Decay piles on more cold damage and resistance shred, and then the Transplant keeps you fast and mobile across the map. And even better, this build doesn't just clear, it also sustains incredibly well, thanks to the leech, mana recovery, and the high endurance threshold. While it works fine with the rares, uniques like the Velokin's Jaw, Traitor's Tongue, the Twisted Heart of the Enkeros, Siphon of the Anguish, Shattered Chains, Red Ring of Alteria, and the Nihils will push the setup into the true endgame power. If you ever wanted to play an unstoppable Grim Master build that combines speed, sustain, and destruction, then this is the one for you. So let's break down the skills, because this build lives and dies by its synergy. Harvest is the main source of the damage, and it feels incredible once you convert it to the cold with a shattering. This not only changes the visuals to the icy side wings, but also unlocks scaling with the cold damage modifiers, which the entire setup revolves around. Then Flay is your secondary damage skill, but really it is the enabler of the entire build. With the army of the skin, every flask will stack builds of extortion, which grants both the flat melee damage and AoV scaling. At max stacks, you're sitting on ridiculous flat melee damage, and nearly double the radius, turning your side swings into a screen clearing arcs. Then now onto the Reaper form, which is the iconic transformation of the build. When you enter it, you gain a ton of life leech, survivability, and a burst damage. Nodes like the Reaper's Curse will boost crit chance, Rapid Destruction will add attack speed, Soul Shred enhances your defenses, while the Wild Shroud gives additional protection. The Haunting node applies Mark for the Dead automatically when you swing, by stripping 25% of the enemy resistances, and letting your Cold Harvest hit even harder. Then next we have Aura of Decay, which is a constant aura that adds even more cold damage scaling. Normally it deals poison to you, but with the nodes like the absence of the life, inoculation, and respite, you mitigate the downside and instead gain defenses. Cold Death will convert it to the cold scaling, while Vulnerability and the Fume Fever will shred enemy defenses even more. Essentially, the Aura of Decay becomes both an offensive and defensive multiplier that passively buffs while you're fighting. And finally, the Transplant ties everything together by being your instant mobility skill. With the Acolyte's node, it grants both haste and the frenzy, so your movement and attack speed will shoot up every time you cast it. Then Bone Armor grants a strong layer of damage reduction, and Pale Blood will restore mana on use, which smooths out the sustain. Not only it is great for dodging mechanics and repositioning, but it also fuels your resource economy. Between the Transplant, Flay movement, and the Reaper's form innate speed, this Lich feels faster than most melee builds in the game. Next, moving on to the passive tree, which is where we make the Lich truly unstoppable. We start with 20 points into the Acolyte to pick up basics like the mana, health, and intelligence, but the bulk of our investment, which is over 90 points, goes into the Lich tree itself. The reason why we commit so heavily is because every major node in the Lich will scale directly with what the build is trying to do, so sustain life, scale melee cold damage, and thrive in low life. Forbidden Knowledge is essential for mapping necrotic resistance, which allows you to handle Aura of Decay without dying to your own aura damage. Then Executioner is another big pick, as it enables dual wielding, letting us run Belakin's Jaw with a Traitor's Tongue for the maximum scaling. Then we grab Corrupted Form, which activates the low life playstyle, and gives big multipliers once you're below maximum health. The result is that by going deep into the Lich, you create a feedback loop where every swing heals you, every aura buffs you, and your damage keeps climbing the lower your life dips. And finally, we don't bother with the Necromancer or the Warlock trees, because their bonuses will focus more on minions and damage over time, which does not fit with our cold melee setup. Now let's talk gear, because this is where your power level skyrockets. The single most important stat for this build is dexterity. Every point of dexterity will grant flat melee damage to both the Harvest and the Flay, and when combined with the Velokin's Jaw, it also boosts your movement speed. And that's why you want to stack dexterity everywhere. So rings, gloves, helmet, boots and body armor. For weapons, the Velokin's Jaw is the best in slot, which gives us a ton of flat damage, attack speed, skill levels and the movement speed. And then in the offhand, we get Traitor's Tongue, which is your another powerhouse, with ideally at least one legendary potential to push it further. It grants flat crit chance, more skill levels and insane synergy with the dual wielding. The Twisted Heart of the Inkeros is an excellent early relic for sustain and scaling, though in the late game, the Shattered Worlds from the Uber Abrat will outclass it. Then for rings, the Siphon of the Anguish is too good to pass it, and it adds up Void Shred, Leech and the extra damage. Pair it with the Red Ring of Alteria, which not only boosts resistance, but also grants damage reduction when you meet its attribute threshold. Then on the belt slot, the Shattered Chains is the clear winner, by adding a mix of survivability and the offense. Then for gloves, start with the Falcon Fists, which will give you attack speed and endurance, but for the endgame players, you should transition into Immortal Vice for maximum sustain and the damage scaling. Then for armor, the Snowblind is a strong defensive option thanks to the blind and high armor, while then the core of the mountain for the endgame will provide the damage immunity if you can farm it. Next, when it comes to idols, the Throne of Ambition is the absolute must-have, giving you a huge boost to both the defense and offense during the boss encounters. Outside of that, you want to prioritize idols that enhance survivability while keeping your damage scaling high. Look for large idols with the attack speed, cold damage and increased melee damage while channeling or attacking. Then fill the rest with defensive layers like the health, vitality, endurance, regen, armor and resistances. These idols aren't just fillers, they round out your sustain, so that you can stay in the Reaper form and keep fighting without dipping too low. Next up, let's go over to the blessings. The Grand Emptiness of Ash is the critical shock multiplier blessing, letting your harvest crits hit like a truck. Then the Grand Might of the Sea Titan is another huge one, doubling your cold damage for the consistent scaling. Then Grand Resolve of Humanity shores up resistances across the board, which frees up affix slots on the gear. Then Grand Vigor of the Jorman increases endurance threshold, which makes your sustain far more reliable. And finally, the Grand Body of Obsidian stacks armor for a huge chunk of the extra durability. With these blessings combined, your damage skyrockets, while your defenses become nearly untouchable. And now last but not least, let's see how to play this build. It's pretty straightforward but incredibly fun once you get it rolling. Before entering the combat, toggle on Aura of Decay, which will stay active for the consistent buffs and the resistance shred. Then transform into the Reaper form and stay in the combat to keep it up. And remember, Reaper form only drains life out of combat, so as long as you're leeching you will remain transformed. Then once you're in it, start using the Flay to build up the exhaustion stacks. These stacks will boost your flat damage in AoV, and once you've capped, your harvest swings will become massive sites of arcs that wipe the screen. For farming, you mostly alternate between the Flay 4 stacks and the Harvest 4 kills, while using the Transplant to teleport from the pack to pack, blink across the gaps and dodge incoming damage. The Transplant also restores mana, so you never feel too low. Bossing is where the build really shines. You maintain your exhaustion stacks with the Flay, keep Aura of Decay active and spam Harvest to unload the damage. Use Transplant as your emergency tool to dodge the telegraphs or to blink back into the fight after mechanics. Overall, between your sustain, crits and the leech, you can outclass and outdamage nearly every boss in the game. So let me know what you think about this build in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, then you definitely don't miss my previous top 7 best builds video, where I showed even more powerful setups, so click the screen now and I'll see you in the next one.